One. So I wanted to go live tonight to talk about this upcoming SAT. This Saturday, December 1st, the SAT is taking place, and it could be for your junior or senior, or if you have a seventh grader and they participated in the Duke Tips program, they may be taking the SAT this Saturday as well. So as I'm live, if you have any questions about the SAT, let me know. But I wanted to go over a few things that I thought were important to know about how the SAT is set up and what to expect when you come into test day. Typically, the test starts right at 8 a.m. So you want to make sure that you are there right at 8 a.m. or you are there about probably 7:45. If you are a high schooler, you want a form of an ID, and I will put a link on my site for the acceptable forms of ID that you need to bring with you. If you are a seventh grader taking the SAT, you have an actual separate admission ticket that you want to bring with you. If you're a high schooler, you also want to make sure you have your admission ticket. It has your picture on it that they check along with your ID, so you want to make sure you bring that as well. The other thing is pencils. I highly recommend you bring a couple pencils with good erasers. You can't have highlighters or pens or anything else. So you want to take pencils, and I recommend taking a pencil with you that you actually use all the time. It was always kind of a trick I used in school, was to take a pencil with you and write and take a test with whatever writing utensil I was used to taking and answering questions with. So you want a pencil with a good eraser. So if you want to bring a couple pencils with you, and then a calculator, but don't go bring a fancy calculator that you are unfamiliar with how to use. Only bring a calculator with you that you are very familiar with using. If you take a calculator with you that you're not familiar with using, sometimes you will end up spending too much time trying to figure out how to use it. And here's the thing about the math SAT, this goes for the ACT as well, is that every problem on there can be solved just handwriting it out. You don't need a special calculator to be able to solve any problem on the SAT. In fact, if it's a right triangle, it'll be a Pythagorean triple. You can look those up. If it is a square root, it is going to be a perfect square. So typically, it's just used for the tools to maybe help you do your math, double check your math, but you don't actually need it in order to be successful on the math portion of the SAT. So those are the things that you kind of want to bring. And I'm going to put a link. I actually posted my last newsletter that I sent out, and on that it has a link to all of the acceptable calculators that you can bring. The other thing that I always recommend you bringing is a watch with a minute hand on it. Some of the electronic watches, like your Apple Watch, they may ask you to take that off or turn it off. Sometimes even with a Garmin watch, they may ask you to turn those off. So you want to bring something with you that you can see the minute hand go by, because the thing about the SAT is you're not going to learn anything new by Saturday when you take the SAT. But if you know the strategies on how to be successful with the timing of the SAT, sometimes you can use that to your advantage. So having some sort of clock, or making sure you're positioned in the room where you can see the minute hand go by, that's going to be key as well when you're taking the test. So making sure you have some sort of, always bring a jacket so you have layers in case the room is cold. Bring a snack with you for your break times. Anything else like that you want to make sure you bring. So looking at the overview of every section, the very first section that you're going to take is the reading section. The reading section has 52 questions, and you get 65 minutes on it. 52 questions, 65 minutes. There's 5 passages. Some are going to be enjoyable to read. Some are going to be not so enjoyable to read. But what I recommend, here's how I recommend doing this, because the thing you have to know when you go into the SAT is that you do not get any penalty for an incorrect answer. So even if you have to guess an answer, you want to put an answer and you want to leave nothing blank ever. Nothing blank ever. And I even recommend, better than that, not to Christmas tree any answers, but to bring in your letter of the day. Already know, is it going to be A, B, C, D? Pick your letter of the day and stick with that for any answer you don't know. Statistically speaking, you're going to find a better option as opposed to Christmas treeing it if you just pick that same letter every single time. So with the reading section, you have 5 passages. Like I said, they're not going to all be enjoyable to read. They're going to have maybe 8 or so questions, 8 to 10 questions a piece for each passage. Actually, a little bit more than that with 65 minutes. And the passages are going to be literature, historical documents, social sciences, and natural sciences. And that's how they're going to test your ability with reading comprehension. But here's the thing. If you get 13 minutes a passage, you look at the clock, you write down your little time, because you can write all over your test kit. Don't worry about writing on it. You write your little start time, and you give yourself 13 minutes on that passage. That's it. If in 8 minutes in, you have answered 5 of the or 6 of the questions really well in that passage, you've looked up the vocabulary, or you look where it said, what is this answer in the line? Or even the question of, what is the answer? And then the next question is always, how can you prove that that's the answer? Those are 2 questions you should always get right because it's right there. You want to make sure that you answer 5, 6, 7 of the questions that you know how to answer. And then when it looks like it's about a minute left in your 13 minutes, you fill in the rest of the answers for that passage with your letter of the day, and then move on to the next passage. That way, you are giving each passage kind of your equal brain and equal capacity to each passage. And I guarantee you, you're going to increase your score if you follow these timelines. Because what some students do is they'll get stuck on a passage for way too long, and then all of a sudden they tell you there's 5 minutes left and you are only in the 3rd passage. And so you haven't even gotten to the last 2 passages. So time out your passages for reading. After that, you are going to take a little break, and then you have your writing and language. I believe there's about a 10-minute break after reading. And then you're going to have your writing and language, which is 44 questions, and you only have 35 minutes. This is all grammar, vocabulary, and context and editing skills. And here's the thing. They always want you to be succinct, meaning that if they say, how can you replace this part of the sentence? You want to try to find a smaller size piece of that sentence and make sure it still makes sense. If you're looking for a vocabulary word, if you're looking for a new way to write the sentence, always read it in your head if you have to, because that's going to, and if it doesn't sound right, it probably isn't. Always look for ways that they can say things positively. If you look at the ACT and SAT, if it's a negative answer, like, for instance, in the reading section, the author's purpose was because he was mean and vile and he wanted to do something bad, something silly like that. It's probably not your answer. They want all their answers to kind of be positive. So look at that as well. And look when you are in the writing and language section. This is the only thing that I would recommend you kind of look up tomorrow throughout the day, just periodically. Look up grammar rules. Look when to use a semicolon versus a comma versus a colon. Look up all of those kind of grammar and syntax issues, because those are what are on that writing and language portion. And those 2 tests together, the reading and the writing and language, that's what makes up your score for that whole reading section of the test. Then you're going to get about a 5-minute break, and then you're going to do the 2 math sections. There is a math with a calculator and a math without a calculator. So you are going to get first the no calculator section, and you have 20 questions in 25 minutes. That means you have a little over a minute for every question in the no calculator section. And again, this is a little bit harder because some of these won't all be multiple choice. Some of these are kind of fill-in, so you're going to have to kind of do your best. But you need to remember that the math is up through about Algebra 2. There's a few trig questions on it. And guess what? If you don't know the trig, if you see SIN, COS, TAN, and you have no idea what those mean, and you don't remember sine, cosine, and tangent, fill in your letter of the day and move on and give your time to questions that you may know. Always think if they give you a diagram, there's going to be an answer. So sometimes they'll give you a diagram or a shape in a question, and they'll say one of the options is that there is no answer. If they give you the shape and they give you the diagram, there's going to be an answer. Think about what makes sense. They're usually drawn to scale or drawn a little bit close to scale. So always think about what makes sense for your answer. And the answer is typically there. So if all else fails, work backwards, plug in answers and see which ones work. So you have your 20 question, no calculator section. So those calculators are going to be set aside. And then you have a 38 question calculator section with 55 minutes for that 38 question calculator section. So again, you have well over a minute a question. The thing about math is the same as that reading, is you want to give every question equal time. But if you can't figure out the math question within about a minute, put your letter of the day. If you think it's something you can come back to, if you've given every question an opportunity to answer it and to actually try on that question, put a little dot next to it on the answer sheet and move on and say, I'm going to come back to this question, but fill in your letter of the day just in case you run out of time, because you do not want to leave anything blank on the SAT. Every question should be filled out. But the other thing that I've heard can sometimes, if you like to kind of work in the test book for a while, always do 5 questions at a time and then go fill those 5 answers out on your test, on your bubble sheet. Because if you don't, sometimes people go and answer every question and then you run out of time to fill it all out on your bubble sheet and you may incorrectly bubble an answer. So you want to make sure that you give yourself that time. So if it's 5 questions and then you go in and bubble your sheet, go ahead and do that. If you are taking the optional essay, a lot of schools are no longer requiring that. Only very, very few schools. If you are in the state of Florida, none of the state college or universities require the essay portion anymore. But if you are taking the essay, you have one essay and you have 50 minutes to write it, and you read a passage and then you explain how the author builds their persuasive argument in that passage. If you've taken a class like AP Seminar or even AP Lang, that is usually helpful when you're writing that essay section. But really, the colleges don't typically look at those scores anymore, so they are not as relevant or not as much needed anymore. But again, the overview, you always take your reading first, then you're going to take your writing and language, then you're going to take your math, and you have 58 total questions on your math, but remember it's 20 questions that are on the no calculator section, and then you're going to have 38 questions on the calculator allowed section. And again, if you are stumbling with trying to figure out a math problem with the calculator, then you're probably doing it wrong. You only need the calculator really if you want to kind of justify, or if you don't add very well, or if you're like me and dyslexic with numbers and you always think about your numbers backwards, then I highly recommend that you use your calculator when you're adding or subtracting, just kind of taking your time in that. So again, a little bit, you get there early, get there by at least 7:45, plan on being there till about 12:30, 1 o'clock, depending on your test proctor, how long it's going to take for each testing room. Wear layers in case you get cold. Bring a snack, bring a water, bring extra pencils with erasers. You don't want to start writing answers and then being worried about trying to erase you can write all over your textbook. All of those strategies that your teachers taught you about how to underline keywords, anything like that, always use. Here's another little hint about the reading section. If they tell you that they want you to look at a particular line, so say they ask you to look for a line in a passage. So they want you to look this is a copy of my newsletter that I sent out. But if they say to look at this line, and here's line 25, and they want you to look at something in line 25, use the rule of thumbs that your answer is going to be in this space or this space. So your answer is always within a thumb length away from the line that they actually tell you that they want you to look at. So you don't have to read the entire passage. If they say something's in a line, you're going to find your answer within this space and this space. If you are reading the entire passage and they're asking you to tell you the author's purpose, the author's purpose is going to be in the first paragraph and the last paragraph. So again, spending some time kind of reading through the passage so you understand the entire passage, but kind of understanding some tips and tricks when you're taking it is going to help serve you better when you are taking these tests. So reading, writing and language, math with no calculator, math with calculator, and then hopefully if you're not taking the essay section, you will be done for the day. But again, go in. The one thing that holds most students back from doing really well on these tests is thinking you're a bad test taker. It is mind over matter, and I don't know how many times I spent telling students, they always say, well, I'm a bad test taker, so I'm going to do poorly on this test. You have to kind of change your thought process when you go into this test. Not be overly stressed about it. If you are a senior taking this, you don't necessarily have to decide to send your scores anywhere because a lot of the colleges may have already made their decision on these scores. So you don't necessarily have to send all of your scores everywhere. You can wait. But I will tell you, it's within the first, I want to say it's within the first 3 to 5 days after you take the test that you get the option of sending your scores to a college for free. Here's the best part, guys. The colleges don't really care if you did worse on this test than you did on your previous test. They will still always only look at your highest reading score and your highest math score. They don't care how many times you take it. Typically, if you take this test more than 3 times, it doesn't show a super increase in score. But if this is your first time taking it, great. Send your scores in for free, because if you wait to send them until you get them back, remember they are $12 a score to send to the colleges that need them. But you are going to get these back before the end of the year. So December 1st, I believe I saw that the test scores are going to come out somewhere around December 14th. They are going to try to do kind of like a rush score on getting these scores back, so you'll know in plenty of time. And hopefully if you are a senior, you may be taking it. If you're in the state of Florida, you may be taking it for Bright Futures. I highly recommend. You will not regret getting that money and taking the test over and over until you get the Bright Future score. If you have already been accepted into a college and you are taking this for a merit-based scholarship, make sure you know the score that you need and ask when is the next time that I can take the test to show you the score increase. If you are a junior, I applaud you for taking this test because you're going to get the scores back with plenty of time to practice before the next test, which is the March test. And every time you take it is just great practice. So good luck to everybody taking it tomorrow. I hope this was a good little overview of the SAT for you. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. I will always be happy to give you any feedback, give you any help with taking it. And again, if you really want to increase your score, start to think about the strategies, re-listen to this and re-look at, I will post this again. I'll post this on the IGTV in my Instagram account on @YourCollegePlanScout, and I will post it on Facebook as well. But this is definitely something, this is a strategy test. Remember, the SAT is saying, are you ready to think at the college level? So they really want you to think at a certain level. But guess what? You're not going to learn everything again and in time to take this test. It's all about the strategies. It's all about knowing how to time yourself, because a lot of students do poorly. Number one, because they think that they're going to do poorly, so they end up doing poorly because that's the energy they put out. So you got to think about your energy that you're putting out on test day. Number two, they get worried about the time and they don't pay any attention to the time. And all of a sudden the proctor is saying that there's 5 to 10 minutes left and you only have like 20 answers filled out of 50, and then you start to stress. So think about these strategies, re-listen to this. Good luck. Please feel free to reach out to me. If you guys have any extra questions, I will always be happy to help you. And I hope you guys have a great Thursday night and a great Friday at school. And obviously, I really hope you guys have a great test day on Saturday. Thank you.